Hello, everyone. Welcome to Eat to Treat. This is Dr. Amaris Williams, and together with Eat to Treat, we aim to end health disparities. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I'm an avid foodie and a cook. And today we're doing a hypertension or high blood pressure friendly recipe, and that just means it's full of vegetables and low in sodium. And and we do this every third Saturday of the month, and then every first Saturday of the month we do a diabetes friendly recipe. So today we're making coq au vin, which is just French for chicken cooked in wine, and yeah, that's about it. Oh, the ingredients are on eat-to-treat.org. So if you want to cook along, it's kind of late now, but you can always come back to this video and watch it again. And after you get your ingredients and get them all set up. So let's get started. Okay. First step is let's crack open the wine. I'm using this Pinot Noir that was recommended to me by Tim and Giant Eagle on 3rd Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. He was telling me that a good Burgundy, which is the other varietal that I suggested besides Pinot, he was telling me that a good Burgundy starts at about $40, and this is a decent Pinot Noir grown in a similar way as a Burgundy would have been grown, and it was only 20 bucks. So I'm gonna pour myself a 5-ounce pour, which is a serving of wine. And cheers, everyone. So don't put the wine completely away. We've got to measure some out to cook our chicken in. The first thing we're going to do is put 1.5 cup of the wine, whatever you got, Burgundy or Pinot, and pour out 1.5 cup into a measuring container. And the little lines on mine are faded, so I might be a little heavy-handed here. All right, so 1.5 cups of wine, and then once you've got that, pour in 1 cup of chicken stock. I'm using this low sodium chicken broth that I got at Kroger, I think, or Giant Eagle. I don't know where I got it. I got it somewhere. Either Kroger or Giant Eagle. So pour that up to the 2.5 cup mark if you are doing it all in one measuring cup like I am. And I can just barely see where I'm supposed to be pouring this. Okay, now comes the fun part. Now comes the brandy. We only need a 1/4 cup of brandy. Brandy is a little stronger and more expensive, so we're not using as much of it. This is an optional ingredient. You don't really need brandy. But if you have brandy and want to use it, pour in a 1/4 cup. All right. And take a large bowl and pour your marinade into your bowl. And then we're gonna put the chicken in there. So I've got chicken thighs. Any cut of chicken will work really. I picked chicken thighs because they give off a lot of fat when you cook them. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a roux with that fat. And a roux is just a thickening mixture. And we're not going to use all the fat that comes off the chicken. We're going to pour most of it off. So if you got boneless, skinless, thinking, oh, the skin is going to have too much fat, we're actually going to cook the fat out of the chicken skin and then pour it off. But if you did get boneless, skinless, you're not going to have as much chicken fat when we go to the browning step. And that's fine. What you can do is just use olive oil and to make your roux. But but if you have skin on chicken thighs, then um, then we'll use the chicken fat. All right, and so I'm just going to put 4 of the thighs in the marinade and then set that aside. Okay, and now let's get on to the vegetables. I did promise vegetables. And don't forget to sip your wine on occasion. And if you're going to be snacking on your vegetables while you're cooking, definitely wash your hands. You don't want to cross-contaminate the chicken bacteria with the raw, ready-to-eat vegetables. But everything that we are working with today, we're going to be cooking. So it's not that critical, but you still want to be mindful that the chicken has bacteria that you don't want to eat raw. You want to cook. So I have a peeled onion. Hopefully your onion is also peeled. And I'm just going to slice it. I'll cut the stem off, keeping the root intact. And then I'm going to cut it in half through the root end so the root is still on there, because that's going to hold it together long enough for me to slice it. All right, so just going across, slicing it. Nothing fancy. And I've got my fingertips curled under, so it's impossible for me to cut them off. All right, now that I've got half my onion cut, I'm going to turn on my pot. I'm at 5 out of 10 as far as heat goes. You'll notice that I have a pot and a pan. We're going to do the vegetables in the pot. We're going to brown the chicken in the pan. So go ahead and put about a tablespoon of olive oil, tablespoon and a half of olive oil in the pot where we're going to put the vegetables. And then go ahead and throw your onion in there. Yes, I sharpen my knife fairly often, probably more often than most people. I'd say at least once a month I sharpen it. I didn't sharpen it before this demo, so if there's some accident, that's totally my fault. All right. Almost done here. Okay, and then the next vegetable that's going to go in is the carrots. So I'll get my vegetable peeler and my bowl and go ahead and peel my carrots. I think I put 4 carrots. Yeah, 4 carrots in the recipe. I've got 5. And that's just because they're not as big as I would have wanted them to be. Yeah, definitely a sharp knife is critical so that you don't hurt yourself. Because you have to use way more force when you're using a dull knife. And if it slips, then you've got more force behind it. It's harder to control. And you can end up, cutting off something that you had planned on keeping. So, definitely a sharp knife is key. I'd also love to hear in the chat any recipe suggestions. Anything that you want to see done more healthfully. Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm kind of tired of peeling carrots. That seems like every recipe I mean, I love carrots and I love eating them, but every recipe I do, it seems like I'm sitting here peeling carrots. So If you want to see something else, just let me know. All right, one more carrot. And don't forget about your wine. I feel like peeling carrots is justification for taking a sip of wine. Alright, so let's get the carrots chopped and really sliced, not chopped, and in the pot. And all I'm going to do is cut the top and the tip off of the carrots, and then slice them on the bias. And the bias part of the slicing is not critical. You can slice them any way you like. I slice them on the bias because I like the way it looks in the stew. But there's no nutritional benefit to slicing your carrots fancy. At least not that I know of. Okay. Don't forget to stir your pot on occasion. At least as frequently as you're sipping your wine. Okay, and I think I've said this before on this channel, but carrots are full of beta carotene, which is a form of vitamin A that it's like a precursor to vitamin A. Your intestines activate it, and then or is it your liver? One of them. It gets activated in your body after you eat it, and becomes vitamin A. So, which is good for your eyes, and it's a signaler. So like when your cells are making copies of their DNA and to make proteins, vitamin A is very integral in that process. So vitamin A is very important for cell division and growth and the function of every cell in your body. So not just your eyes. All right. So next up, mushrooms, I think. Yeah, mushrooms. So this is a pound of mushrooms. I'm only going to use half of this. You may want to wash your mushrooms first. I forgot to wash mine. But I'm just going to cut these. These are kind of large, so maybe I'll cut them into 6 pieces. When I did this before, I cut them into 4 pieces, and they looked really nice. But these are too big for that. So I'll cut them into 6 pieces. This one can be 4 pieces. So I just cut it in half one way, and then cut it in half the other way until I get quarters. The goal is to get bite-sized pieces, but we don't want them too small because then they might burn. And then the other thing is with mushrooms is they absorb oil, so you may have to add a little bit more to the pot after putting the mushrooms in. Hello there. All right. Maybe one more. Okay. We'll give that a stir. And this is already starting to smell pretty good, but once we add the garlic and the wine, of course, it's going to smell awesome. All right, so the next up is 2 ingredients that we want to stir after we incorporate into the pot. And that's tomato paste and garlic paste. I'm using garlic paste. You can use minced garlic, you can use fresh garlic, whatever you have on hand. I think I put a tablespoon of garlic, 4 teaspoons of garlic, so that's a little over a tablespoon. I'm just gonna eyeball it. All right, hopefully you can see that, how much garlic I put in there. And then it's 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. And I'm just going to eyeball that as well. Putting about that much in. You can see. And then I'm going to stir that, and once it gets in contact with the heat, I'm going to keep stirring it because I don't want it to burn. So let me get on doing that. You could use potatoes, especially if you're not trying to watch your blood sugar. Like if your only concern is trying to be hypertension friendly and you're not trying to also, care for diabetes or pre-diabetes, you could definitely sub some of the carrots for potatoes. If you don't like carrots, you can sub all the carrots for potatoes. It's going to change the texture of the soup. Which may or may not be a good thing depending on what you're looking for. But potatoes are definitely a traditional ingredient in French cooking, and this is definitely a French dish. So you could use potatoes. Okay, so my tomato paste and garlic paste are incorporated well throughout the vegetables and cooked. So now, before they burn, I'm going to pour in my marinade. Careful not to let any chicken spill in there. All right. Okay. And then now we're gonna deglaze the pan, and that just means stir in some liquid to get all the burnt bits off the bottom of the pan. So deglaze is just a short way of saying get all the stuff that's stuck to the bottom of the pan off the bottom of the pan and back into the liquid, because that's flavor. And we want the flavor dissolved into the soup itself. All right, and then we're going to leave the pot alone and we're going to move our attention to the pan. And I'm going to turn the pan on and put some oil in it. About a tablespoon. Doesn't have to be much. Because like I said, the chicken is going to create its own fat or release its own fat. So have a sip of wine while the oil is heating. And what we're going to do is once this oil gets really hot, and I mean pretty darn hot, we're going to put the chicken thighs in skin side down, and that's going to sear the chicken skin. And the oil is hot, but not quite hot enough. I don't see it smoking, so I'm gonna let my oil start smoking before I put the chicken in, and that's gonna help it keep it from sticking to the pan. If your chicken skin does stick to the pan, it's not a huge issue. We can still use the fat to make a roux. It'll be okay. I did it the first time I made this. My chicken skin stuck to the pan, and it was a mess, but it still tasted good, so don't worry about it. All right, so I think my oil is getting there as far as heat is concerned, so I'm going to grab my first piece of chicken. Oh, the thyme, yes, thyme. After we get the chicken in the pan, we'll put the thyme in the pot. So get the chicken skin side down in the pan. Oh, there's two here. All right. So the thyme, I cut this thyme from my backyard and where I have it growing. And the thyme is old enough. It's not a young baby thyme plant. So the stems are woody and brown and tough. So I don't want to put the whole thing in the pot. What I'll do is grab it at the top of the thyme plant, like the part where like it's growing from here up, right? So this is the root end and this is the stem end. So I'm going to hold it at the stem end and then pull down and strip the thyme leaves off of the stem and then throw those in the pot. And so I'm going to do that with all my thyme. So root end, grab the hold of the stem end, slide your fingers down to pull the leaves off, and then throw them in the pot. So again, grab the stem end and slide your fingers down, throw it in the pot. And that's how we get the thyme in the pot. If you've got dried time, then just measure out 2 teaspoons and put it in the pot. All right. And the thyme is just for flavor. This one's kind of branched, so when you pull the leaves off, the branches come off, but it should be fine. All right. So let me stir that up a little bit. Okay, let's check the recipes. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is cut up the kale. While the chicken is browning. Okay, so this is dinosaur kale. I've introduced this to you before, but it's also called Tuscan kale. And the reason why I chose this is because it holds together well. I mean, all kale holds together well when you cook it, but this one has the little nubby texture of the leaves, which holds the sauce. And so when you cook it in with the thickened, the roux thickened stock and wine, it's going to hold the flavor better. So I'm just going to slice it from the stem end back to the root end until about maybe here, and stop cutting it there, because then it's mostly stem and the leaves are not there. So I'm just gonna cut slices, kind of like you would do collard greens. And we got to the point where it's mostly stems, and I don't want to eat the stems, so I'm gonna just throw the rest away. All right. So the chicken is browning quite nicely, making a lot of noise. And this is when I would take the rest of the chicken that you brought and put it in Ziploc bags or whatever container you have that's freezer proof, and label it with today's date and what it is, the chicken thigh, and put it in your freezer. Okay, so my chicken mostly didn't stick, or at least it didn't stick as bad as the last time that I did this. But you can tell that there's way more fat in this pan than what I put in there as far as olive oil is concerned. That looks good. Oh yeah, time for a sip of wine. It's always time for a sip of wine. So I'm gonna flip my chicken over. And we're not trying to cook the chicken in the pan. We're gonna cook the chicken in the pot. All we're doing is putting color on it, and the color is the flavor. So that's why we're doing this extra step here. You could just put the chicken directly in the pot, but one, you wouldn't cook off the fat. So now the benefit of putting it in the pan is that some of the fat has been cooked out of the chicken skin. And you've got color on it, which means you've got flavor on it. So let's have some wine. And I'm just going to give it a few more seconds on the flesh side of the chicken thigh. I mostly just wanted color on the skin. The meat side isn't going to get too much color on it. Then we can put the chicken in the pot with the kale and the pearl onion. So here's the pearl onions that I got. They're in the freezer section. If you couldn't find them in the produce section, that's why. They're in the freezer section. And this is a 12-ounce bag, and I only want 8 ounces, so I'm only going to put in 2/3 of it. But I'm going to go ahead and add the pearl onions to the pot. And then the kale. I'm going to put the kale in. Now, the dinosaur or Tuscan kale is not a traditional ingredient in coq au vin. So this is something I added to the recipe because I thought it needed more vegetables. And this is supposed to be a healthy way of cooking it, so more vegetables it is. Okay, I'm going to turn off the pan while because if I take the chicken out, then it's going to start burning the oil. And when I remove the pan from the burner, it's going to turn off. It's not going to like me. Probably going to make a beeping sound. Okay, so now we've got all this chicken fat in this pan, which is, you can save it and use it for something else if you want, or you can just pour it in the trash, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pour all but 2 tablespoons out into my bowl here. Okay, so I've got 2 tablespoons of oil left. And to the 2 tablespoons of oil, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of flour. And that's going to make our roux. So a roux is 1 part fat, could be any fat that you choose, to 1 part flour. And I've made a roux with whole wheat flour before. You can do that if you want to max out your fiber in this recipe, but it's not entirely critical that you do that. So I'm going to turn this back on. But I'm going to turn it down to 3 out of 10 because a roux you want to cook on low heat. And we're looking for a paste-like texture. We don't want it to be too runny because that means you have too much fat or not enough flour. So if it's runny, add more flour. We want it kind of pasty. Kind of thick. I'm going to stir my chicken in because it's just sitting on top right now. And if you think you need more liquid in your pan, go ahead and add more chicken stock. You can also add more wine, but you might want to save that for drinking. But the kale is going to release some liquid, so you don't really need to add too much more liquid. How long do we cook after adding the chicken? So it depends on how big your chicken thighs are. We want to cook the chicken completely. And I have a thermometer that I'm going to show you. We want to get the inside temperature of the chicken to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And when you put the thermometer probe in the chicken piece, you don't want the thermometer to touch the bone because the bone will be a different temperature than the meat and it's going to give you a bad reading. And you don't want it too close to the outside because the outside is going to cook faster than the inside. So you got to get it inside in the meat, not touching the bone, and then take your reading. If you've got one of those dial type thermometers where the needle kind of moves around the face of the thermometer, then it takes longer for it to get a reading than a digital thermometer. But either one you have, you want to put the probe in there, not touching the bone, touching the meat in the inside, and then wait for the dial to stop moving or the numbers on the digital to display to stop changing, and then take your reading. So I will show you with my thermometer. I have this thermometer. I think the minimum temperature is like 0 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So you can use it in the oven. But let me see. I'll turn it on. And this will start beeping if it's at 165 degrees. And I don't think we're at 165 degrees. So I'm going to pick a piece of chicken that you guys can see. So here's a piece of chicken pulled out of the liquid. And I'm just going to stick the thermometer in there and not touch the bone. And see where we're at. So this one is apparently more than 165, but this one is not. Oh no, I had it too far in. So now I only have it in a little bit, and I'm at 130. So this needs to cook a little bit longer. So when you put your thermometer in, it's kind of like a trial and error. You put it in, make sure it's not too far in, make sure it's not too shallow, make sure it's not touching the bone, I kind of knew it was not. Once it started going up above 180, I was like, oh no, it can't be above 180. I haven't been cooking it long enough for that. So, and then if you started your roux at the same time I started mine, you can turn it off. This is what's called a blonde roux. And that is, you can keep cooking it longer as long as, because you can get a brown roux or other dark colors of roux, but this is what's called a blonde roux, where you cook the flour and it's starting to change color a little bit, but it's not dark. If you use butter to make your roux, you can get a wide range of colors because the butter will brown. But that's ready to go. All I'm waiting for now is the chicken to cook, and then I'll put the roux in the pot, stir it around, it'll thicken up, and then we'll be ready to go. And I will show you what that looks like after I have some wine. If you have, let's say hypothetically that this chicken has cooked and it's at 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which we're not quite there yet on this pot, but what we can do is, I'm going to add a little bit more chicken broth to mine. So I added about a third of a cup chicken broth to my pot, and I think we're good. And what I'm going to do is now add the roux. Just going ahead and get that in there. And then stir it around. And that's just going to thicken up the soup. And after you put your roux in there, let it simmer for maybe 2 or 3 minutes to thicken up. And then it's ready to eat. Okay. You can cover it with a lid if you want. I did not cover it with a lid because I wanted the wine and the stock and everything to evaporate and kind of cook off the alcohol and all that kind of stuff. You can cover it with the lid. Some recipes say cover it with the lid, some don't. I wouldn't cover it with the lid once you put the chicken in there, because then that will just facilitate the chicken getting more soggy. But it's already going to be a little soggy because you're boiling it, essentially. So, all right, let's do a quick outro so that you guys can finish this and get on with eating. So today we made coq au vin, which is a diabetes-friendly meal when you don't put the bacon fat and the bacon and all the chicken fat in there. So we poured off most of the chicken fat. We added extra vegetables, made it more healthy than it normally is. And so now it's a DASH diet appropriate, hypertension friendly meal. So thanks for joining us. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of the next demonstration. And I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.